This is your pool party captain, Randy Fitzsimmons, and you're listening to the Game Changer Podcast. Pew pew!
Ladies and gentlemen, introducing Nate the Great!
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Game Changer Podcast. I am your host, NateFNGreat. I have been on the wrestling show for roughly about a year now, and I've had my encounter of fair matches, and I've also had my encounters of very good as well as very rough rivalries. But with that being said, I thought it was only fair that since I was able to be a part of the hardcore season, that I would go through and rank 10 matches on there that I think were my favorite to watch throughout that season. So, it is indeed going to be looming on the eve of the season of greatness, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to be breaking down the top 10 favorite matches of the hardcore season. Now, I do have a couple of rules and stipulations when it comes to this. Some of the rules that I have here are that if it was like a single one-off kind of matchup, so a lot of you will go to the Wrestling Show fan page and YouTube page, and you'll kind of notice that there are those one-match kind of shows. I am not counting them because, in all honesty, I think that they deserve a list of their own, to be fair. I am not going to be counting YouTube Mania on here because, in all honesty, with YouTube Mania 5 going to be probably one of the biggest shows of this entire company's history, I believe that YouTube Mania deserves a list of its own. So what I'm more focusing on are going to be the 10 episodes of the wrestling show that were indeed a part of this season. That will indeed include the Screw City finale episode that was on episode 5. That was a Patreon exclusive, but then got released to the public not too long ago. So, with those rules and those stipulations there, let's get right into it, and let's actually go into the honorable mention part of this, and a runner-up to this top 10 list, that being the Galactic title match between Ralphie and Aiden Jones on episode 3. It is difficult to do a wrestling match in a backyard, and in honesty, it definitely does do a little bit of wear and tear on the bike. But that does not stop Ralphie and Aiden from putting on a great matchup between these two individuals. You have Aiden, the young and up-and-comer, who is looking to become the champion and be the Galactic champion, against Ralphie, who is just this sick, twisted, psychotic, demented Galactic champion who just enjoys pain and suffering, and he is one of those guys who definitely is a great foil for Aiden, and this matchup definitely showcases both of them at their finest and has a very, very good story throughout it, and the finish, it just gets absolutely brutal. Definitely get the chance to watch it, and you might notice the fact that I'm giving you guys the episode number. All I can say is, you're welcome. Alright, at number 10, we have the Duos title matchup between JB and Aiden taking on the Outliers. It's very interesting, you guys, because the first matchup of the first episode definitely kind of sets the pace for what you can expect going into the season. Whether it's going to be, good, whether it's going to be probably a little rough, whether it's going to be average. This is one of those matches that definitely sets the season off right. And I could not overlook this matchup whatsoever. You have the Outliers who just reunited, and they knew that they were going to have to be a strong force, no pun intended, going into the season. And the best way that they can do that is to win the Duos titles against JB and Aiden. Great showcase for these wrestling show originals. And they just laid it all on the line with Kate and Matt literally just throwing everything that they could at JB and Aiden before defeating them with their assisted bonsai drop finish, in which the Outliers became the duo's champions. The crowd went wild. Everybody was happy. Well, anybody that wasn't the Ministry of Greatness, that is. Number 9, we have the Screw City tournament matchup between Kate Jones and superstar Xavier Michaels on episode 4. Xavier Michaels. This is a guy who has taken liberties with me online, but I'm also not going to deny the fact that he is an absolutely incredible athlete in the ring. And to be honest, this was his debut. This was his first matchup to kind of showcase what he could bring to the table. And it's in a tournament matchup, so there's a lot of pressure for him going into this. And facing a former Galactic Champion, a big star like Kate Jones, that definitely is one of those things that it's not a easy hill to climb over. And he learned that quite a bit the hard way, as Kate Jones just did everything that she could to win this matchup. Hitting bulldogs, she laid it into him with some kicks. Xavier Michaels would try to use some underhanded tactics to take down Kate, but in the end, it was the crossbody by Kate Jones that sealed her the win, but also helped her advance. And unfortunately, it also earned Xavier Michaels $40,000 by betting against himself. What a man. He's a man. Such a... You know what? Nope, I'm not even going to go that far. At number 8, we have the duos title matchup between the Ministry of Greatness's NateFNGreat and Mr. Z taking on the Outliers. One of the things that I really thought was lacking a little bit in one of the seasons was that when they had the duos season, they didn't always have the duos matches as much as I think they would, and some of them were kind of lackluster. This matchup definitely raised the bar a bit with the duos matches, and they only got better from here on out. When you look at the duo landscape, there were only so many teams that you could really go through, and for Matt and Kate, they had to basically reestablish those duos titles and bring that prestige back up again. To be honest, they did a pretty good job with this matchup, and I'll admit, getting in the ring with them is no easy feat. Matt has always been one of the most competitive guys that you can absolutely imagine. Kate, I've really yet to lock horns with her, so from what I've seen, she's a very fierce competitor. Obviously, when we lock horns, it's going to be a different story. Now, we did our best. You had a Wisconsinite and a Canadian trying to dethrone the duos champions, but in the end, Matt and Kate, they came out victorious. Can't say that, it was a good day for us, and I also can't really say that it was an off day, so maybe I'll give them this one. At number 7, we have the Screw City Championship ladder matchup, where it pitched NateFNGreat versus Matt Jones on episode 5. 8 competitors, but only 2 were going to be fighting for that championship. And honestly, you could not have 2 bigger stars at that time than Nate and Matt Jones. You had Nate, who was just going in there, showing that he was cocky, arrogant, brash, and just wanting to make that huge statement that he was there to make an impact, and he was going to stay there for a long-ass time. Where Matt, he's looking to win another championship so he could be a duo belt champ. Yes, that actually sounds more lame now that I say that. More of a 2-belt deal, just like Kate was at the time. And with Mr. Z and Kate in their respective corners, it was just absolute chaos between the two of them. You have Matt and Nate, they literally lay each other out with move after move after move. It was physical, it was crazy, it was a ladder match. What would you expect? You also got a nice high spot by Matt Jones where he decided to do the Cactus Jack elbow drop. That definitely seemed like it was going to be the end, but due to a technicality, NateFNGreat walked out as the Screw City champion. Don't believe me? You're going to have to watch that matchup and see. At number 6, we have Matt Jones taking on Patrick McMichaels on episode 7 of the wrestling show. This matchup has a lot of layers to it because Patrick McMichaels was taken out due to an attack and assault by Matt Jones, and Patrick Michaels is looking to avenge that assault, avenge that loss that he had against Matt Jones. And in all honesty, this was one of the best ways to do it. You had literally these guys fighting in a backyard, which again, I've mentioned the fact that it is no easy feat. And these guys laid it all on the line. This was the ultimate showcase for Patrick McMichaels to show that he is back and he was in a full gear, full-on, focused mode here. And the finish, with Wyatt getting involved, but then also that beautiful diamond cutter that Patrick McMichaels hit on a Matt Jones. It was just absolutely the exclamation point that he needed to really show that he had arrived and that he was going to be a force to be reckoned with. Pun intended. At number 5, we have the Internet Championship matchup between Kate Jones and the All-American, or the American, Kayla, on episode 7. Now, it's kind of interesting to see that I would have these two matches kind of back-to-back, but in all honesty, I really did love this matchup between Kayla and Kate. These two ladies have been battling each other for what seems to be years, honestly. And this, by far, is one of my favorite matches to watch of theirs. Now, I will admit that it starts off very slow. You have a lot of rest holds, and you have a lot of, headlocks and side locks, and, just a lot of the rest holds deal. And there came a point where I was like, okay, this is getting to be a little bit tough to watch. But I also know that I am in the minority of that, and there are a lot of fans in the wrestling show that may like the fact that these two women are wrestling each other like that. But I promise you this, that once you get past all those rest holds and wrestling holds and such like that, you get a really good match between these two ladies. You got them breaking out, gory specials. You have them breaking out a pump handle slam. We're starting to see them just literally lay it into each other. I feel the intensity between these two women. I just feel the passion that they have. And the finish is one of my all-time favorite finishes of this year, in which we see Kayla lock in an abdominal stretch with a tree and using the mandible claw on Kate. I was not at all expecting that kind of a finish, but it was absolutely beautiful to see that, because it's a move that we've not really seen, but it's also a move that really is familiar. It's a move that just looked absolutely brutal and just really showcases that Kayla, again, is really good, as well as Kate, and that Kayla had arrived and showcased the fact that she was ready to be the Internet Champion for about 2 minutes, and then Aiden won the title, which we're not going to get into that. Number 4, we have the Screw City Tournament semifinal matchup between Matt and Kate Jones on episode 5. Now, there's a lot of elements that get put into this, and I know that some people might be surprised to see that a Matt and Kate Jones match on this list. What a shock. I mean, they've wrestled each other so many times, and I know for some people it might get kind of a little repetitive, where you see them, wrestle on, where you might see some of them wrestle on Patreon. You may see them wrestle on the wrestling show. It might get a little repetitive for some people, but I will say this, that this did not feel like one of those matches. I loved the fact that they added a comedy element at first, where basically Kate said to Matt, if you let me win this matchup, I'm going to blow your mind away. I thought that was great. And then it just goes from comedy to a very physical altercation between the two of them, almost feeling like an MMA fight between them. It just was, it got really physical. And then it just continued on from there and there. And the finish of Matt Jones hitting a Death Star kick as Kate was coming down, that move just never gets old watching, because it was beautiful. So Matt Jones will go on to the semifinals, and of course we've already talked about the finals, so we don't need to go into that. That was still just absolutely great matchup. One of my favorite Matt and Kate matches. And at number 3, we have the Screw City opening round matchup between Matt Jones and Al Chaos King. This was one of those matches where obviously Chaos was going to be on his own, and it was also a way for him to showcase his talents as an individual. And to be quite honest, couldn't pick a better opponent than Matt Jones, honestly. You see these guys just getting into just physical altercations between the two of them. Rights and lefts and kicks and everything that you can imagine, just literally showcasing that they are indeed going to be fighting quite a few times over the next few months. Now, I will also say this, that while Chaos may have been out of the ring for a while, you don't necessarily see that with this matchup. He is definitely on his A game here. He may have come up short to Matt Jones, but it was still a matchup that, in all honesty, I think that he would be damn sure proud of. And honestly, I'm very proud of him too. Number 2, we have the Stadium Stampede match for the Screw City Championship. That's the Ministry of Greatness takes on the Force on episode 6. Now, some people might be surprised by this because they would have thought that they would be my number 1. Not necessarily. But I still think that the Stadium Stampede matchup between these two teams was absolutely fun. It was physical. You had moves that were just being hit left, right, and center. And we incorporated the playground, which was just absolutely physical. The ending had a controversial finish, which, not gonna lie, I don't see as controversial as a lot of people might think it is, but I understand why Patrick McMichaels did what he did. Mystery of Greatness retains their championship, and they definitely earned a lot of eyes going forward. The Force, they definitely knew that they were going to be in for a rough ride in the next few months. Now, what does that mean for my number 1? What is the number 1 favorite matchup that I really looked on in this season? What was the one match that stood out, in my honest opinion, above the rest? The number 1 matchup, my favorite matchup of the hardcore season, was the triple threat match for the Internet Championship as Aiden defended against Kate and Kayla on episode 8. This matchup has everything that you would want in a wrestling match. You had 3 different personalities. All of them were clashing with each other. We don't get the, like I said with my complaint earlier with the Kate and Kayla match, we don't get a lot of those, we get a lot of like the rest hold mania kind of deal there. No. This time around, you have 3 different elements that could just literally go crazy at any time, and anything could have happened, and everything did happen. You still had some of the familiarities as far as submission goes. You had Aiden coming in every now and then and getting involved. You had Kate showcasing, her athletic prowess, but also having to deal with a leg injury because Kayla went to work on that ankle and just, I swear she would have, if she would have locked in an ankle lock on there, she would have probably snapped it in two. But you still had every single one of these competitors all battling and showing that the Internet Championship is not just a prestigious title, but it is a championship that has a lot of honor and integrity put behind it, as it was the first major championship that the wrestling show had on their show before the Galactic title came to be. And I will say this, one of my favorite moments in that is Aiden getting double clotheslined by Kate and Kayla. Before that, he was just like, women, don't you love it? I don't love it. Just absolutely a classic deal that just stands out above the rest. That has been my top 10 favorite matches of the wrestling show hardcore season. Guys, Ministry of Greatness is going to be just absolutely a force to be reckoned with coming in the season of greatness, and it is going to be a season that you definitely do not want to miss. You know how to follow me on Twitter, Instagram. You know how to listen to us on podcasts. Guys, I've been NateFNGreat, and I will see you soon. Bye. Bye.